Welcome, everybody, to episode 5 of the Smiling and Grinding podcast. Today, we are live with Eric Gill of Skyway Valuation. Eric, welcome to have you. How are you doing?
Well, thanks for having me, Brandon. I am doing well. It's hot and steamy down here in Southwest Florida, but wouldn't rather be anywhere else.
All right, I like it. So I figured with you being a Boston legend that we should surround ourselves with some more Boston legends. And what I learned is what we're supposed to do is make you feel comfortable. So then it's more of a flowing conversation. And so I figured that with Larry and Tom and Ted and Bill and the rest of the crew that you'd be feeling right at home.
Well, I am. I have as many as world championship rings too as Ted Williams. So we're on par. The other guys, they got a few more, but it definitely making me feel at home.
Good.
Especially because my home office is littered with Boston stuff as well.
Good. So before we get into this, share some content information, company information, everything like that, so that the droves of people that will be watching this know how to contact you.
So
look at this.
You can see my business card right there. Fancy, right?
There we go.
So I'm in Manatee County, Florida, and so it's Skyway Valuation Company, and we actually have a website that's still maintained, which is www.skywayvaluation.com. That's VALUATION.com. And if anyone wants to email me or text me or call me, you're more than welcome. My phone number is 941-408-3257. And I can always be reached at my email, which is eric@skywayvaluation.com.
There we go. All right. So make sure you get ready for tons of phone calls coming in and emails, and you're going to get saturated over the next, 48 hours.
And I love loan officer deals. So,
Good. We love contacting you guys. So let's go ahead and kind of get into this. You have been an appraiser and been in the industry for a long time. You are a well-known legend in the industry, bit of veteran all over the place, and happy to kind of be able to ask you some questions and get your insights and your thoughts on the appraising industry, kind of where it's headed, and everything like that. But what I like to do is kind of go through a little bit of your background to kind of show people that are interested in, starting their own thing, to kind of where you started, that, there is not a typical path to doing anything really, right? You start off doing one thing and, life takes you in different directions and you just kind of got to kind of take those routes. So college, where'd you go to college? What was your major?
So I was started out as a business major and went to, funny story, kind of. I was going to go to Fordham University in New York and go to the business school. I had been accepted there, couldn't wait to go and be a high-powered business exec, work in Manhattan, go to school in Manhattan. That was what I wanted to do. And I had already sent my deposit. I was all ready to go. And then my mom had a friend down in Naples, Florida, that she wanted to go visit. And I said, well, what the hell? Might as well go check out University of Miami. I was already going to Fordham, but I said, what the hell? Let's go check it out.
Yeah.
So we flew down and checked out the campus. And I loved going to Florida. I grew up going to Florida my whole life. So naturally, when I went to the campus and there are big pools and people swimming and there's like outdoor food service and palm trees, I was like, I'm out on Fordham. And changed to Miami, but that didn't last long. That Miami is a different city. It's a different culture. I was not a rich kid, so it's largely a wealthy kid school. So I couldn't hang. So I ended up back at home, and I bounced around between the state college and the community college before I wrapped it up there at Bridgewater.
All right.
But
so you ended up getting a degree in business management?
I actually never finished. I think I'm probably probably a semester and a half short. The problem was I got into the real estate appraisal business.
Okay.
And
look at that segue right there. You just take this thing over. You do your thing and I'll just sit here.
I had already had a lot of debt from being at Miami for a while. It was
Yeah.
expensive back then. Back then, it was 26,000 a year, including room and board, and that was in the '90s, and that seemed like a lot of money. Now it's
Yeah.
probably
That'd be
75,
ideal
80.
right now.
Yeah, right. So I got back, and I had the debt, so I was just doing the small public school thing. And a friend of my dad's had been in the real estate business for a number of years, and his son took over the appraisal part of the business. And so I was just working part time in there, um, doing clerical type stuff, or I'd go
Mhm.
out in the field with him every once in a while and help out on appraisal jobs. And then he said, "Well, why don't you do some appraising?" I said, "Well, it seems like it's a lot of work." He said, and I had to get a license.
So what is
Well,
appraising?
at
Let's
that
start off with
time,
that. Let's before we get the cart before the horse. So what is appraising?
okay, so appraising, and I only do the residential side. I don't do the commercial side.
Okay.
So I would recommend, though, for people who want to get in the business, they want to be on the commercial side. That's where the money is and stability. But that being said, so appraising is simply providing an opinion of value to a client. It could be most oftentimes as a lender needs a value for mortgage lending purposes. And so you're helping them, kind of judge the collateral, both value and suitability for their mortgage.
Yep.
But it's oftentimes done, the appraisal is done for an estate purpose with attorneys, or you might have parties that are divorcing, or you might have a business needs to define what its assets might be for lines of credit. There's all sorts of reasons why people would get one. The most common, though, being mortgage appraisals. Right.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what we do. But when I got into it, this guy Jonathan Asker, encouraged me to do it, and I was concerned about getting a license at the time. I was maybe 18 and a half, maybe 19, I don't know. And all he had to do at the time was send in, I think it was $75, and promise to take the classes within like a 1 or 2 year period. It was like 30 hours of classes. I can do that. So
Yeah.
I got my license. I was probably the youngest trainee in the state, never mind the country. But I started out and I learned properly. I was always supervised, never went on my own, never did anything that was inappropriate. So that was really good, because I think there's a lot of potentially unethical people out there, or maybe people just don't know any better.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate enough to be trained by somebody who really knew what they were doing, was highly ethical and competent. So I learned how to do it. And then the money was just too good.
Yeah.
I was making a ton of money, and I couldn't figure out, well, if I'm making at the time 50 or 60 grand a year, why am I going to rack up that kind of debt to do what I was happy doing?
Yep.
And at the time, the appraisal business was something you could do and make some money in. And there wasn't any likelihood that the business was kind of going away. So I didn't look at it as being, I didn't see any downsides to it.
Yeah.
I did want to finish my degree, but it just wasn't the case. And I had met a wonderful young lady who we ended up getting engaged relatively young, and we got married. We're still married, and she did rather well. And so when we had 2 incomes at the time, it allowed me, because there's a lot of ebbs and flows in the business, allowed me to kind of do my thing. And
Good.
she was more stable. It was great. And so I didn't ever see a need to do anything else.
Good. So you kind of talked about, the you got to send in a check and promise to pay, or promise to complete 30 hours of training. So that is something that obviously is a low barrier to entry, and you'll get probably a lot of people that are enticed to do something that's that low of a barrier to entry. So I know when you and I were kind of talking about it before, that's changed pretty dramatically to this point now. And you and I went through 2008 to 2011 together when we were at Chase together, and kind of saw why that low level of barrier to entry kind of may or may not have been an appropriate level. So kind of how is it the barrier to entry to becoming an appraiser, a residential appraiser, how has that changed from then to now? And then kind of what are your thoughts about it?
So it was too low.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have a 19-year-old doing a valuation on your house. without proper supervision. Again, like I said, I was always supervised, and I never did anything that was complex. I mean, I did stuff that basically anybody could do today, but it was too low. And then anybody who, even unscrupulous people, could just go ahead. I don't even think it mattered if you had a criminal record at the time, and you're going into people's homes. So nowadays, to get a license, or even just to get a trainee's license, you have to take a certain number of hours. And then afterwards, then you go find basically somebody you can go work under. Okay. Where back in the day, someone would look to have trainees or a number of trainees, and they would go recruit people and potentially pay to get them trained up. And then they would, do, split work with them. But like I said, nowadays, the whole business has totally changed in that so to get the original license, you've got to take 50 to 75 hours of education. Mm-hmm. And then again, you can't start working until you're working under somebody. Well, the way the business is now, volumes are relatively low, rates are high. Yep. You don't want to train your competition, especially where there's too much saturation in certain areas. Yep. So if you're a guy like me, why would I want to train somebody to work in my own market when as soon as they get their license, they're just going to be, out on the street competing against me. So, the barrier to entry is very hard. Number one, the education. Number two, the cost. Number three, finding somebody to train you. And then if you do find somebody to train you, someone that is going to stay with you and train you the way you need to be trained. And I think you have to have 2,000 hours of a time before you actually can go out on your own. So you're talking about a 2-year commitment with somebody, getting paid very little money, because that supervisor that you have to be registered to, again, he's getting a split. You say he's getting $500 for the appraisal. Well, he's got to pay you. He's got to pay himself. Yep. Plus do his other work. So it's very difficult. Yeah. I got into it because I knew somebody, and I got into it at a time when volumes were much higher. Appraisals were looked at as something that's very important, and nobody was trying to get rid of them. So, like I said, you could kind of build a career. Yeah. My recommendation to people today is the appraisal business is a wonderful business. If you can be affiliated with somebody that you know and trust, and maybe you're working in different geographies. Like, for example, I'm south of Tampa, north of Sarasota. So ideal for me would be someone who's like north of Tampa, who I'm not competing with, but I could still partner with on jobs. And you need to find a relationship like that if you want to do residential, or you got to get into the commercial world, which is still fantastic. In the commercial world, there's still a lot of oversight over banks. And the banks need to have appraisals for all these commercial jobs, and the commercial jobs pay very well. The number of appraisers out there on the commercial side is very low. So those folks, if you want to get into the appraisal business, that's where you want to head. Okay. And it's a great way to make a living. I make residential or commercial. You make your own schedules. You get to spend a lot of time at home. You can work at night if you want to write reports, and in the day if you want to go golfing, great. Yeah. Or if you want to go to a kid's play, or like I do a lot of coaching of sports, or go to my kids' events. Yep. It allows me a lot of flexibility. So it's great if you can get into it, but unfortunately the business has changed, and I wouldn't really recommend anybody get into it, except on the commercial side. Yeah. Just being honest.
Yeah. Yeah. And, so I kind of want to go now into, what we went through when we were at Chase, kind of when we started working together and everything like that. It was, to give everybody some context, it was the Great Recession, 2008 to 2011. It was, we were much younger at that point, had much less gray hair. And, we were kind of faced with a predicament where the GSEs, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, were put in a position where there was such a significant level of mortgage loan default that they were putting loans back on the originating companies. When I say putting loans back, I mean it's called a repurchase, where Fannie and Freddie is looking to recover the amount of money that they bought the loan for, because it was defaulted. And in order to justify that contractually and legally, they needed to find a err in the manufacturing of the loan. So it could have been income calculation, could be assets, could be some sort of documentation like that. But the gray area, because like you said before, an appraisal is an opinion of value. The gray area that if they couldn't find anything when it came to credit, income, asset, is that they could always challenge the appraised value, right? So we work hand in hand, right? I would deal with credit, income, asset side. You would deal with the valuation side, and we would meet with Fannie and Freddie on a monthly basis in person and go through loans that were called impasse loans, where Fannie and Freddie thought that there was manufacturing defects, and us as Chase that sold the loan to them, we were taking the position that we did not feel.
Correct.
We were taking the position that we did not feel that there was anything wrong with the manufacturing of those loans, and seeing the amount of discussions that we had around proper valuation, I'm guessing is why that there's been a significant change in the barrier to entry, and a lot more. It takes a lot longer and a lot more time and effort to become an appraiser now. Hopefully that's coming to the loan officer realtor world as well. There's very low barrier of entry to that. So, as everything shifts, I'm guessing it'll shift in those two areas as well. But to kind of counteract the that there is a debatable appraised value rate, even though it is an opinion, there's been a lot of kind of technology updates and upgrades and information that's become available. And, there's certain companies like CoreLogic that have almost become like a big conglomerate of information, and that's how they're operating. So kind of seeing the tools that you had when you started to the tools that are now available, how do you feel that they're impacting your job or the industry kind of as a whole?
Well, first I want to bring a little point here. You mentioned that in the mortgage industry there was a low barrier to entry. I think there was no barrier to entry.
No. Okay.
When the local pot dealer from the town I grew up in is doing mortgages, for some other little small brokerage, this is probably 2004 or 5. When they're brokering loans, okay, that's a problem. At least in the appraisal industry, you knew who was doing some things. The biggest issue was, again, with the whole trainee issue. People would sign up 10, 12 trainees and just send them out there. They would take in, a couple hundred jobs a week and then farm out all these jobs, and they would just add their names to the report. Like they weren't supervising anything. And that's where a lot of the fraud happened. It was amateur hour, or people who the license didn't mean anything because you could just get it like that. It didn't matter if you lost it like that, but because you had an opportunity to make a lot of money really quick.
Get in and get out, and
Yeah, but for people who were serious, right, it was, it hurt because it actually cut into the amount of money people on the street could make. But yeah, getting to my time today and the way we appraise things, I honestly don't do anything a whole lot different than when I was doing it. So I started appraising 97-ish, and then I went to Chase in 2008, and I think I left in 2015. I pretty much still follow a process that's very similar to when I started. I might not have paper documents everywhere. I might save everything as PDFs and save them in a hard drive or on a cloud somewhere. But I still take my notes by hand. A lot of people use tools that when they're in the field, they can use an iPad or their phone, and they can measure the property and directly input into that application. And then when they get home, it's there. I don't do it because a lot of times I don't have cell phone service, and it's a pain in the neck. And what's it going to do? Save me 20 minutes? I enjoy typing. I type well. And to me, that's a part of the process. So I like doing that. There are some pretty good technological tools, though, that save me some time. For example, when I'm writing a report and I have comps I want to bring in to my report, I can't. Are you still there? Okay, I just blacked out. When I bring data into my report, it'll automatically import a lot of the fields that I want it to, so I don't have to type the square footage, the lot square footage,
Yeah.
and the sale dates and prices. All that stuff happens automatically. But the adjustments and everything, I pretty much manually do it, or I'll manually analyze. But there certainly are a lot of tools out there where people can use automation to help derive what adjustments are. That's taking kind of a real mathematical, theoretical approach. I'm more practical in that I like to look at the data the way a buyer or seller would. They're not going, oh, I'm going to pay, $3,302 less because of the size of the porch. That's not the way people look at it. They're gonna, am I going to pay a couple extra grand or not? And that's kind of the way I tend to look at things. So I shy away from certain technology that's available. Just because I'm a creature of habit and I enjoy the way I do it, and I don't need to do it any other way. But like I said, a lot of the younger appraisers out there are using a lot of the technology, and I think it makes them I don't know what that makes them a better appraiser, but it makes them maybe a little bit more efficient. But
more efficient, yeah.
I'm not concerned about the efficiency so much. That's just me.
Yeah.
In terms of the tools that the GSEs are using, they're using a lot of automated tools, AVMs, automatic data checks. They're doing all kinds of scrubbing all the reports and running all the data through. So if the work I'm doing was an anomaly, trust me, I would know. I do a few hundred reports a year. If I were doing things that were out of line compared to other people, they would be sending feedback. They do send feedback letters, but I haven't had any issues. And I'm very careful. I do a fair amount of I do high-end, really custom stuff. The really expensive homes, waterfront, oceanfront, and a lot of automated tools will struggle with that because that stuff's not conforming.
They're unique properties, right?
Yeah, or I'm doing stuff that's very conforming where I might not even have to leave the street for my comparables, right?
Yeah.
And a computer could almost do it as well as I can.
Yeah.
So, I'm not seeing the face of their technology. The stuff's obviously happening in the background. I'm just not seeing it because I'm not privy to the information because I haven't had problems. Again, if I had problems, they would let me know. The biggest thing going on with technology, it seems to be, is everybody's caught up and trying to kind of like out woke each other. So the commentary in the appraisal reports right now seems to be a big thing. Subjective commentary where everyone's getting hung up on whether or not I called a bathroom a Jack and Jill bath or I call it a master bedroom. That seems to be what people seem to be hung up on right now with their technology because they're running like scrubs for words as opposed to when I just look at the report, So that's a big thing going on in the appraisal industry right now is a lot of that.
So are you seeing, so I know, so I guess I can't say I know, but I would assume as an appraiser, you get an appraisal done, you get a report done, you submit it to, you submit it on, and you want to move on and do the next one. But you just said that a lot of people are kind of getting caught up on vernacular and things like that. Are you seeing that, you're completing appraisals now, you're getting the report completed and you're having to go back and respond to inquiries about, it's a Jack and Jill bathroom. Can you please comment on that? Is it typical for the area? Are you seeing a lot more back and forth?
Yeah. So I'll just tell you how I operate my business. I don't deal with those requests. If it's not a part of the letter of engagement, I'm not doing it. I'm not in the business of doing revision requests or treating my appraisal report like a memo going back and forth with an underwriter.
Yeah.
If it's not required, I don't need to address it. That's on you. And part of that mindset I have is probably because after I did the repurchase stuff and that wound down at Chase, I ran the collateral escalation desk. What do we call it? Appraisal escalation desk, AED. I should know that. I started it.
Everything was a desk. Everything's a desk, right?
Everything's a desk.
Yep.
So I ran a few different teams and we handled appraisal escalations from customer facing all the way to, again, loan disputes, but in everything in between. Right? Someone didn't like how the appraisal turned out. They didn't like the behavior. The underwriter doesn't like something. But one of the things that our group did, we had a corrections team. And every correction that came out of Chase for a couple of year period had to go through one of our collateral experts. And when I say collateral experts, I mean appraiser. I don't mean somebody that we trained in India as a, quote, expert. We had licensed appraisers that worked for me, and they reviewed every revision request that went out to make sure that if you were doing business for Chase, you wanted to do business for us because we were making it easy for you. So if an underwriter asked for something that wasn't required, we could stop the request from happening. And then we allowed the AMCs, like if one got through, and then one of our appraisal partners in the field had a dispute with a request, they could send it to us and then we could nix it. And we had the absolute authority to knock out these revision requests that were, number one, time consuming. Number two, appraisers weren't getting paid for it. Number three, it's hurting your customer. The borrower is the one that's being held hostage to this back and forth going on. But you have right now a lot of appraisers who never worked in that part of the business. They don't understand how it works. So they'll go back and forth 5 or 6 times on something in an appraisal report, treating it like a memo. And then if, say, a consumer looked at that report later on, they're going to be, what is going on here? Right? These people don't even, it looks like they don't even, it doesn't look professional. So I just simply refuse to handle a lot of those requests. I don't ignore them, but I push back. I'll provide a commentary. I'll put something into their system. But if it's unnecessary, I'm not going to do it. I don't do requests just because somebody wants me to do it. Like, you know, comment on, well, what's that in the background? If it's of concern, I'll mention it to you. That kind of thing, right? And the language thing, I'm going to have to kind of come around. I haven't had anybody push back except for one client, and it wasn't a bank client. And I didn't make the change. I refused to. But I will in the road, just because I don't want to deal with people's crap, honestly. I just want to move on. I just won't call it anything. I'll just call it a bedroom or whatever. You know. But it's stupid. It doesn't have the meaning people think it does to use certain language. People want to be offended, and I don't know.
They get caught up on everything. Like you said, you might as well just not mention it. Just don't have it as a specific name. Just be as general as possible, and you'll avoid back and forth on that. Because again, like you said, it's time consuming where you already completed the report, you already did the work. So now it's taking you away from doing additional reports or you know, whatever else you might be doing.
And the other impact is to the customer, because the customer is the one that's being held up for it. So my advice is just avoid. If you use it and stand by it if you want, I suppose. But it's just easier to just avoid it so that you don't have to be you don't have to have it all held up. The problem is it doesn't end. It's where, you know, it was a couple words. Now it's, you know, they don't like the term. They don't like any subjectivity in a report. But of course, the report is an opinion, right?
The whole thing is subjective by nature.
You're observing condition, and what's your opinion of the condition? Well, it's average. They don't want you to use fair. They don't want you to use you can't use the word church in a report, like, because they think that's could show some sort of bias. But you can't even use it to say, for example, say your property was across the street from the First Baptist Church. And you just stated it factually, no good. Okay, so it's stuff like that can it can irritate you. But like I said, you gotta learn. You gotta suck it up. If you want to make money and you want to be efficient, and you don't want to keep coming back on these things, just avoid it and move on.
All right. Well, I got one last question for you.
That's it.
That's it, man. We're trying to keep it easy. We got to the point. But I do have this one might take a little bit. Probably the most significant of all of the questions so far. So how many times have you seen 80 for Brady? And is it a family favorite?
So
and don't lie. You can't lie. You got to own this one.
Never seen it. Won't see it. It's got Hanoi Jane Fonda in it. I won't go see it.
Oh, that's great. My wife the other day, my wife watched it, and you know, my wife for some reason dislikes all of the goats, right? She won't like Kobe, she won't like LeBron, she won't like Shaq, you know, she didn't like Tom Brady, like anybody that's a goat, like she has no interest in. But all of a sudden now she watched that movie and she's asked me, do you think Tom Brady's gonna play one more year? Do you think he's gonna play one more year?
I have, first of all, he's a good looking guy. So, you know, I can understand why the women want to see him play one more year. You know, he is like a model, but I haven't seen it. And honestly, it's because I hate Jane Fonda. So that's just me. But I did watch a documentary he did about the tuck rule with with Woodson from Michigan. Charles Woodson's the one that knocked the ball out in that Raider game, but they played at Michigan together. So I think it might have been on Netflix. I don't know. It was like a 1 or 2 hour thing. And maybe it was like a 30 for 30. I highly recommend it. Well, anyways, they sit down on a beachfront house in the Tampa area. It's actually in Clearwater. It's Ryan Howard's old house, the guy from the Phillies.
Yeah.
His house had been for sale. Well, they used his house to do the documentary. So like Ryan Howard or Charles Woodson and Tom Brady come in and they're just chit chat and they sit on a couch and there's a huge 70-inch TV and they start watching the Raiders game, that snowball game.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed that. That was pretty good. But that was that's probably the only Brady thing I've seen. I haven't seen that. He did a whole series too, didn't he? Like seasons long, kind of.
Yep.
I
Yep.
don't know.
I
I'm
think
not
Ryan
interested in the first one.
Howard. I think Ryan Howard writes like kids books now.
Does he really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
His house. So that house is crazy. There's a swimming pool with like a lazy river, and the lazy river goes into the house and out down the lower level. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Man.
awesome.
Man, well, we're gonna have to pull some money together and find a way to get you a pool and a lazy river and maybe even a grotto at some point, right?
Definitely a grotto.
All right, man. Hey, listen, I appreciate you taking some time out and educating people a little bit on the appraisal industry. It was great. That period of time that we had at Chase was absolutely amazing. It was extremely unique time, right? It was almost like almost a death sentence for the industry, and bounced back. And like you said at the beginning, our industry is very cyclical, and I'm seeing these repurchases come back a little bit. There's one company that we faced a lot when we were Chase, James Brody, and I've been in contact with him, and he's getting a lot of the volume back up again.
The one thing, the tip I would tell people, especially young people in the industry, is it's a big world, but it's a small world.
Yeah.
And you're going to come back. Like I said, I try not to burn any bridges because I could very well end up working for these people down the road. I surely hope not, because I like, the independence of doing what I'm doing. Yeah. But, things happen. Offers come along, or situations change. So it's good to, maintain good relationships with people, because you don't know who you're going to run back into. I mean, I think we always maintain pretty good relations with the people at Fannie Mae, especially Freddie Mac. The people were fantastic, I thought. Yeah. The pinnacle of our career, of course, being, was it Fannie Mac meetings in when you get made VP? We were in New York.
Oh, we were in Manhattan for that one.
Yeah,
that one. Yeah,
that was the pinnacle of our careers.
It was
VP, baby. And you disappeared.
And we were, like I said, man, we were young back then. I think I was probably like 28 or something around there. And
that had to be what, 2011? You think that was?
No, that had been earlier than that. Maybe around there, 2010, 2011. But yeah, we were burning up the frequent flyer miles and all of the hotel points and everything like that. We were getting out there a lot.
I would tell people, like, I didn't have the authority to approve my own pencil purchase, but I had the authority to basically sign off on $75 million in repurchases due to appraisal.
Yeah. When we were picking up McDonald's for breakfast in the airport, that was always tough to get signed off on an expense report. But like you said, the $75 million of mortgages that we just went through was just kind of just a daily activity, right?
Yeah.
That's great. All right, man. Hey, listen, good luck. Keep doing what you're doing. I know that family life's treating you well, and appreciate you being on, and we'll talk to you later, man.
Well, thanks for having me, Brandon. We'll talk soon.
Boston legend, Eric Gill.
Okay.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.